Hello, it's me, Mike with HPDS. I'll be getting into Genesis 39 in this video. So let me go ahead and get ready and let's take a look. Before I get started, of course, I want to go ahead and do what I normally do, say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. May your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Please give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our debt, as we forgive those in debt to us. And Lord, lead us not into temptation, but instead deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom of power and glory, Lord, forever and ever. Amen. So, chapter 39, before I get into it, what I normally do is I'll go over a timeline of Genesis 39. Genesis 39 has about 23 verses, so it'll be a short chapter comparatively. And it goes basically verses 1 through 6. We'll read that Joseph is promoted in Potiphar's house. And verses 7 through 12, we'll see Joseph resists the temptation of Potiphar's wife. And then verses 13 through 18, we'll see Joseph is falsely accused. And then verses 19 through 23, we'll see that Joseph is in prison. So that's Genesis 39. And if you remember, Genesis 38 was about Judah and all about Judah's family line. And we read about the two brothers that God slayed because they were wicked. But if we remember from Genesis 37, at the way end of Genesis 37, verse 36, it read, "And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard." And that was Genesis 37 when we read what happened to Joseph and his brothers ultimately threw him into a hole and then decided to sell him to the Ishmaelites instead of murdering him, which is what the original plan was. So I'll go ahead and get into reading Genesis 39 and we'll go through it. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person, and well favored. And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he had committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me, and fled, and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. And he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. All right, so that was Genesis 39, and this one's a very interesting story about Joseph and how favored Joseph is, and really it's quite, it's, we should all really kind of, this is somebody out of everybody that's come out of this line of out of this whole line of Abraham. It looks like Joseph here is the one that out of Israel, he's the one that, he's the do-good kid, he's the good do-good child, whereas the other ones were willing to kill their own brother, which is what they almost did. Let's be realistic. They almost killed their own brother. They really just, at the end of it, only because there was one voice of reason, which was Reuben, and he was the one that kind of put it into their mind that they shouldn't kill him. That at the very least, let's not kill him at least. Let's just put him in a hole and we'll just kind of mess with him for right now. But the other brothers, they went all the way. They might as well have killed him, is what they did. They may as well have killed him because their father thinks he's dead, and he was sold into Egypt. And so now, as far as they're concerned, they're pretty much thinking they're never going to see him again. That's really what these brothers are thinking, that Egypt is something that they're never going to go take a look at. Egypt's not in the cards, and even if Egypt was in the cards, they expect that eventually Joseph would probably die in the hands of his new masters somewhere down the line. They weren't, they wanted him dead, but clearly it wasn't in them to kill him. Somehow, something in them, it was God, clearly not just anything, it was God within them, keeping them from killing him was pretty much all that it was. So, all right. So, like I said, if you remember 38 was the line of Judah. So I won't really go over it other than saying that it's just the Judah and Tamar. If you remember Tamar and how she had the two husbands, but I'll just go ahead and say, skip over that because that doesn't seem to have too much to do with this story. That was just going over Judah's kind of family history and his lineage because of his portion in the upcoming nation that is being formed here. Because what you're seeing is you're seeing the nation of Israel being formed here, and so these are Israel. His name was Jacob, and he had the 12 sons, and from those 12 sons, we're gonna actually see the countries of Israel and the tribes of Israel and so forth. But let's go into 39 and we'll go back. I'll go back line by line and we'll see what the Holy Spirit brings into us. All right. So, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites. All right. So we remember the Ishmaelites. They called them Midianites, I believed, in Genesis 37. Let me see, 37. Yeah, verse 30. Genesis 37, verse 36 reads, "And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and the captain of the guard." So I read that at the very beginning before I got started, but that's what's going on. Keep that in mind. It's just it's reaffirming. It's this other chapter was kind of kind of in between these two. And so 37 kind of goes well into 39 after he gets sold. Um, so these Midianites were Ishmaelites. And so let me see if I take a look at this genealogy. Ishmaelites, Midianites. So why would they be called Midianites? Um, Misha, Masa, these were Ishmael, Mahalith, Midianites. I don't know where the Midianites come from, but the Midianites probably come from somewhere along, his line, his children's line. So I'm not seeing it in this particular, but Midianites. I see Midian over here and Midian. Here the Midian, which is from Keturah. So I wonder why Keturah's line would be considered the Ishmaelite line. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's considering Hagar like Sarah, but on the concubine side, and maybe it's considering Keturah another concubine, and so Ishmael would be the firstborn of both of these two women, perhaps, since Sarah has now passed away. I don't really know. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really know, but they seem to call this guy Midianites, so I find that kind of interesting. And I guess that's why, let me see, I'm checking it out one more time. Verse 30, Genesis 37. And the Midianites. And the Midianites, they're also calling Ishmaelites. But here's Midian from Keturah, and Ishmael is actually Hagar's son. So that's my reasoning. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but they're still calling these guys Ishmaelites, and they're also calling them Midianites. So we'll just keep going, knowing what we know with that. And the Lord was with Joseph, so obviously God is with Joseph. And like I said, basically the Lord is the only reason why Joseph wasn't even dead yet. I mean, he should have probably been dead. They were going to kill him. They planned on killing him. And then they may as well have killed him. As far as they are concerned, he is dead. And he was in the house, he comes to this Egyptian, so he just, it must have been a pretty rough ride out there. Who knows? Maybe he was bound. Maybe he was tied up. I don't really know. It doesn't say. Maybe he was on foot. Maybe he was in a cage. Who knows? But he was clearly a captive. And he just, realized his spot and probably prayed to God. And God was with him. And everything that Joseph did was prospering, right? So he was also very likable. People liked him. They served him. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him. He's talking about the master over here, which is Potiphar. So Joseph just starts being a good servant to the master, the Egyptian over here. So it's this chosen line is he's being a servant to the Egyptian, and that's what this Israelite is doing. Joseph, it's being a servant to the Egyptian. And so let's see what happens. One of the first things that happens is basically after a while, this guy basically makes him the boss of this whole place. And he basically just lives off of the fruit, doing whatever he pleases. He doesn't really have any concerns. And that's what it says. That's he made him overseer his house and over all that he had. And the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house. So he left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and he didn't know what he had, save the bread which he did eat. So he had no clue how wealthy he was after anymore. At a certain point, he just didn't care. He said, Joseph, you know what you're doing. You're such a great servant. Take over. All I'm going to do is lounge and eat the bread all day. I'm just going to chill out and be comfortable. And Joseph did everything. He was a good person and well favored. So, like I said, I find this story very interesting because the Lord is really taking an interest in Joseph. He's really favoring Joseph. Joseph's working hard for his master, even though he's a servant. And being a good servant, it sees that in this world, these masters will put a good servant at the top of everything. And that's what he's seen. That's what we're seeing multiple times in the ancient world. The ancient world was comfortable doing it. In this day and age, we see this kind of in the concept of a CEO and the president. So Potiphar would be like the CEO of a corporation, and Joseph would be the president of the corporation. and that's what they would be considered. What we're seeing here, and so let's see. And Joseph was a goodly person, well favored, and let's see. Then all of a sudden we're having a problem here. So here's where the we see some evil creep into this life, and so now, I'm sure we've seen it creep into other people's lives too. Like, for example, when we saw Simeon and Levi, when we saw them murder the entire, they murdered all of Shechem. Remember, when did they murder all of Shechem? Let's see. It was in what, chapter 34, I believe. Yeah, back in Genesis 34 is when Dinah was defiled, and we saw that Jacob's men killed the men of Shechem. Remember, they had them circumcised, and then they took advantage of the while they were still recovering from the circumcision. And Simeon and Levi go into Shechem, and they kill all the men, and they basically pillage the town. They take the women and the goods, and they kill the men. And so it was a real bad thing. It was a real crazy thing that they did, and that was evil creeping up in their lives. And then we also saw it creep up in Jonah, which is another son of Israel. Jonah had his two sons, and we saw that one in the last chapter. That was Genesis 38, where I'm not Jonah, Judah. Uh, Judah's children, and we saw that Judah had what, his two sons, and what were their names? Let me find out. We had and Onan. Er is one. It's spelled Er, and I think it's pronounced And then the other son named Onan. And it tells us that was so bad that, Judas, this is Genesis 38, verse 7. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. So, we're seeing that in the last, so these kids are, they're letting evil creep into their life. And so we'll see all of a sudden how Joseph sees this evil creep into his life. And this evil comes in the form of his master's wife, and she starts casting her eyes upon him. And she says, lie with me. So she's really gets flirtatious with him, and she tries to, take him to bed. And he refused, but verse says, but he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. So he's saying, my master hasn't withheld anything. Let's take a look at wotteth. We'll Google it. Wotteth dictionary definition. Let's see, archaic, singular, the archaic third person singular present text of present indefinite of wote. What is wote? The definition of wote is to have information or to make clearer. They think it's necessary to have information, their previous statement, to make it more concise. So to basically have information is what they're saying. My master hasn't withheld any information, hasn't withheld anything. So basically, he hasn't withheld anything, any paper, any information. So he knows everything. He's basically saying he hasn't withheld anything from me in the house. And he has committed all that he has into my hands. So he's also committed everything that he had into my hands. And it says, there is none greater in this house than I. Neither hath he kept back anything from me, but you. It said, nothing from me but thee. So he's talking to the wife. Basically, he's saying, no, this isn't right. My master hasn't, he's let me have everything. The only thing he's kept back is you. But that's because you're his wife. And now, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? So he's accepting that doing this is actually not sinning against the king. It's not sinning against his master. It's not really sinning against his wife. It's not sinning against himself. It's sinning against God. So we see that Joseph here is recognizing where sin, what the sin goes to. It's not against anybody but God. And so it came to pass as she spake to Joseph day by day that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. So she's being real consistent and persistent about it. So she's saying, hey, so she keeps flirting with him. She keeps, come on, come be with me, come be with me. And so after a while, it says there was this one time that Joseph goes into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men. There was no man out there. There was basically the house was empty. And she comes up to him and she catches him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." So now she's thinking it's her turn, it's her time. She goes in. There's nobody around. It's perfect timing for her to, for them two to have an affair. And so she grabs him and she tells him, and he kind of pulls out and he flees and he fled and he leaves and he runs. And so then it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them. So basically she says, this is something that I'm sure it's probably very offensive to her. She's really offended, and she's becomes like a jilted lover is what she's become, like a jilted woman. She gets very angry. More than likely, she's angry and she wants to get revenge on him for not sleeping with her when she threw herself at him. And so she tells the people, "Look, I've got his garment in my hand." And she calls all the men of her house, basically all the people that were guarding, that should have been there, the servants and everything. And she says, "Look, Potiphar," talking about Potiphar has brought up a Hebrew to mock us, and he came in to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. So she says that he came in to kind of, rape me. He came in to have sex, to sleep with me. He came in to do something to me. But I cried out with a loud voice. And then when he heard me screaming, he ran off, and he ran off with leaving his garment with me, and he fled and got him out. And so she's telling him that, "Look, everybody, he left this when he ran out after I screamed because I didn't want him to, touch me or rape me or do any of that stuff. He was breaking in." Um, and she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. So now Potiphar comes back, and she talks to, now this woman's telling Potiphar, saying, "The Hebrew servant which you have brought unto us came unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with thee and fled out." So she tells him the exact same story. "And it came to pass when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke unto him, that his wrath was kindled." He was really angry, so he threw Joseph into prison. And so there he was. Joseph is now in prison, starting around here in verse 20. He's in prison, and he's thrown in prison. And there he was in prison. Let's see. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So now we see him here. Look, now even Joseph, now Joseph is given favor and shown mercy, and he's become the oversighter of the prison. He's oversight of the prison. He's keeping oversight of the prison now. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he had, the Lord made it to prosper. So there he is, and this is Joseph. Now he's in prison, but even in prison, God is favoring him, and people, even the prisoner, the warden here, the keeper of the prison, he ends up doing just like Potiphar did. He basically puts everything. He puts Joseph. He sees that Joseph does everything really well. He's a good prisoner, just like he was a good servant. Now he's a good prisoner, and on top of that, he could be trusted. And there he is, being trusted, and they put him over all the prisoners, and everything that happens in there, he's basically in charge of. And the prison warden, the keeper of the prison, is now, just reaping the benefits of having Joseph work for him. So that was Genesis 39, and I'll go ahead and stop this video here. Like I said, it was kind of a short chapter. It's all about Joseph. Joseph, after he is sold to the Egyptians, after his brothers nearly kill him, and instead just sell him to the Ishmaelites, who in turn sell him down to the Egyptians. We see what happens in the start of his life out in Egypt, and basically he spends some time working for for Potiphar until there's an unfortunate incident there with Potiphar's wife, and she accuses him of trying to do something, maybe breaking in and trying to do something sexual to her, when in fact it was her trying to throw herself at him. But nonetheless, uh, he goes from there being a servant of Potiphar to being a prisoner of the Pharaoh's prisoners, and he's also in charge there. He's left over a lot of prisoners while in there as well. So if you're watching this video, I'll go ahead and say please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Bible studies, in-depth Bible studies, chapter by chapter. Um, and please, God bless you. And I pray that we all bless Jesus Christ, and may Jesus Christ bless all of us. Amen.